Good morning, all. We'll just wait a moment as people file into the virtual room, a webinar, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, I think we'll get started. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, or early morning, as in the case of at least one. Thank you for joining us. I'm Adam Lupel, IPI Vice President, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this special virtual policy forum, Rethinking Education, Youth and Digital Education, co-hosted in partnership with the Republic of Korea. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank the government of the ROK for their partnership and for their consistent leadership. It matters at the heart of the multilateral system. Thank you very much. This event comes on the eve of International Youth Day and in anticipation of the Secretary General's Summit on Transforming Education at the UN coming up next month in September. The summit seeks to mobilize commitment and action to accelerate progress on improving education for all. IPI here in New York, we've been engaged on issues of youth and education for some time, most concretely beginning with our work as the Secretariat for the Independent Commission on Multilateralism in 2014, 2016, when engaging, supporting, and empowering youth was one of our principal areas of focus. Among our other areas of focus at that time was pandemics and global public health. Little did we know at the time how intimately related these themes of pandemics, youth, and education would become. As we are all too aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted education and resulted in the closing of schools around the world in 2020. Access to education was disrupted permanently for some, for more than 1.6 billion children and youth globally. While many countries were able to switch temporarily to online education, which had both benefits and drawbacks. My own daughter was not too pleased with the online education. Many could not. Among the many lessons learned from this experience is that we must develop and invest in systems of education that reach the most vulnerable. That to be effective, education must serve the holistic needs of children and youth, including their social, emotional, and mental health. And we must transform the very way education is thought about and provided. We must dare to envision another future. And we must listen and learn from the voices of youth who are in the lead envisioning that future. Indeed, that is the aim of this event, to provide an opportunity for us to learn from young people and to hear them share innovative solutions for supporting the education of children and youth around the world, and indeed for transforming education as we know it. We have a great group of young leaders assembled to do just that. But first we will hear opening remarks from our partners. First, from His Excellency Ambassador Youngbin Bae, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Korea to the United Nations. And next, His Excellency Ambassador Michal Linar, Permanent Representative of Slovakia to the UN and currently UNICEF Executive Board President. First, Ambassador Bae, please, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Lupel, and good morning and welcome everyone. I first like to thank IPI for organizing this event and also express my gratitude to His Excellency Ambassador Michal Miller of Slovakia and all the speakers for joining today. Distinguished colleague, education is the key to unlock the full potential of any individual and by extension of any society. And it is the foundation upon which sustainable development and peace can be achieved. That is why it was very concerning when the COVID-19 caused an unprecedented level of disruption to education around the world, as Dr. Rupa just said. People suddenly had to find a new way of providing education and adapting to digital technology, which had not been easy. And like many countries, Korea has faced some successes and challenges along the way. With most households having internet access, we could be able to take some proactive measures to facilitate a smooth transition toward remote learning, like expanding public online learning platforms, developing and sharing guidelines, and partnering with the private sector tech companies to secure more educational material. These were helpful, but some people have voiced concerns regarding the unequal access to high quality education caused by the digital and also socioeconomic divide. In addition, the potential consequence of having no face-to-face interaction on children's development is still being discussed. And all these challenges are even more pronounced in already fragile settings like conflict-afflicted countries. Our responsibility as a member of the international community, therefore, is to discuss these challenges further, to raise awareness and find solutions together. Against this backdrop, we have partnered with IPI to host today's policy forum to delve deeper into the issue of youth and digital education. In light of Secretary General's our common agenda and ahead of the upcoming summit on transforming education, I hope to hear directly from the experts on the field and learn from their experiences to incorporate and mainstream the youth perspectives on digital education. I look forward to an insightful briefing and lively discussions today. And without further ado, I will pass the floor back to you, Dr. Rupa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you again for your partnership. We will now hear from Ambassador Michal Mlynar, Permanent Representative of Slovakia and current UNICEF Executive Board President. Ambassador, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good morning. Thank you to IPI in cooperation with the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea for this very useful and timely initiative. As you said, not least just before the International Youth Day. Also, as a former educator, I do concur that this is an extremely important topic, and I look forward to engaging with our panelists and with our audience on digitalization, digital education, and youth. Indeed, digital skills development remains crucial for professional success and progress, which include research, online communication, use of online platforms, and knowledge of digital financial services, to add that particular aspect to our discussion as well. And we have seen also from International Telecommunications Union, ITU, it has estimated that tens of millions of future jobs will require far more advanced digital skills, including coding, software, app development, network management, machine learning, or big data analysis, just to mention a few. In compliance with UNESCO's findings, we still see that approximately 3.6 billion people, representing half of the world's population, still lack proper internet connection. And at least 463 million students globally cannot access remote learning, which is still an alarming number and requires our further attention. Besides, most of students do not necessarily have appropriate connectivity, device, or digital skills required to find and use educational content dependent on technology. As you have also mentioned, Adam, COVID-19 pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons, but has also revealed weaknesses of education systems and deepened some already existing inequalities. Even before COVID-19, 48% of the world's children and 90% of children in low-income countries were provided with insufficient education. And I'm afraid the pandemic has further complicated the situation for us in many aspects and in many countries. As COVID-19 has resulted in closing schools, and thus millions of students were excluded from education. And for that reason, connectivity has indeed become a crucial factor to ensure the respect to the right of education. Shifting to more digital learning is definitely a game changer in ensuring that an adequate education is provided to young people, which will also contribute to their well-being and self-development. On the other hand, we should be aware of threats for using internet as well. Of course, issues connected to cybersecurity, safety, and privacy. And therefore, we must pay proper attention to deal with the issue concerned. Regarding UNICEF's role, I just wanted to highlight its publication on digital learning for every child, which was issued in December of 2021. And it can be applied not only to children, but definitely to our young people in general. And let me just mention that there are a couple of really important proposals. Bridging the electrical and digital divides, ensuring the effectiveness of digital learning solutions, protecting well-being, safety, and security, and investing in data collection and further research. Needless to say that in reaching a goal to ensure an adequate online education for young people, joint action and hand-in-hand cooperation between governments, international organizations, civil society and academia, as well as the private sector, in this case, even more important than in other cases, is required. Only by following this approach, we will be able to reduce the youth digital divide, improve lives of young people around the world, and ensure their prosperity in the future. Thank you again for this important initiative, and hopefully we will have a great opportunity to engage on this topic, and wishing the event full success. Back to you. Thank you.
Excellent thing, Ambassador. I can see from both of these remarks really some themes already: developing skills for future jobs, the demands of universal access, the revelation of inequality that the pandemic demonstrated, that predated the pandemic, the need to think also about education as a safe space, including in the digital realm, and as Ambassador Bay also very astutely highlighted, the necessity of partnership with the private sector as well as an extremely important part of this. Thank you also for highlighting the work of UNESCO, which helps a good transition to our panel. We've got four wonderful youth leaders here to speak to us. We've got first Victoria Ibuoye, Youth Engagement Lead, Education 2030 for UNESCO. Pashtana Durrani, Executive Director, Learn Afghanistan. Nihal Den, refugee and peace activist from South Sudan. And Abhijit Kandagale, founder at Katra, top innovator uplink of the World Economic Forum. I will first hear from Victoria. Victoria is the founder of One African Child, an organization she established as a college student back in 2013. One African Child is a movement to redefine learning and create opportunities for the most underserved children and youth in Nigeria. And she is, as I mentioned, currently the Youth Engagement Lead for Education 2030 UNESCO. Victoria, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you to the two ambassadors for your very powerful opening. I'm Victoria Ibiwaye, and I currently work within the Education 2030 Division at the UNESCO Secretariat as the Youth Engagement Lead. I am in charge of overseeing the SDG 4 Youth Network, which is the Youth and Students Network on SDG 4, but also supporting the youth engagement process for the Transforming Education Summit. As we know, the pre-summit was recently organized in Paris, where I was very fortunate to meet Niall. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about Niall's experience and work. And the summit is coming up in September in New York. My journey in education started from a very young age, struggling through education. And very, very early, I learned that, there's inequality in education, depending on where you live, the quality of education you can have access to, and so many things, and wanting to bridge that gap, and also realizing that there's a disconnect between young people and decision makers. And super important that we move away from tokenistic way of including young people, inviting them to events, but to meaningful engagement of including youth voice right from the design of education processes. No one knows better about how to improve education ecosystem than young people who have gone through all of the challenges all their lives. And so today I really look forward to, sharing a bit more about my experience and the work that I'm doing, but also to listen into the other speakers share their experience as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Victoria. I really look forward to hearing a little bit more about really this really important point about the disconnect between youth and decision makers. We really, I think this point that we need to do a better job of incorporating youth voices at the beginning. It's not just about giving a token seat at the table, but actually incorporating those voices to help us build the table itself, to help us build the policies itself. And so we'd like to really hear more about your work at UNESCO in that respect. Next, we'll be interested to hear welcoming Pashtana Durrani, who is Executive Director of Learn Afghanistan. She's also a visiting fellow at Wellesley Women's Center and Aspen Institute New Voices. She's also was named an education champion by the Malala Fund, and was a global youth representative for Amnesty International. And she's also a winner for the 2021 Tallberg SNF Eliasson Emerging Leader Prize and one of BBC's 100 Influential Women of 2021. Pashtana, thank you so much. We're really grateful to have you. Please tell us.
Thank you so much, Adam. Sometimes when people introduce me, I feel so important. I feel like that's another person that is introducing. So thank you so much for that introduction. Happy and honored to be here, and so grateful for the ambassadors who make sure that Afghanistan is still represented, even if when our government is not intact. And thank you so much for you considering inclusion of Afghanistan. Excited to be partnered up with the panelists who I'm making sure that they will be amazing. So I'm going to start with my introduction. My name is Pashtana Durrani. Of course, as you know, I hail from a small district in Kandahar, Afghanistan, from Maruf. As His Excellency Mr. Michael was saying, that there is a disparity. I come from a district where still to this day the mobile networks go down at 6 p.m. in the night, and then they come up again the next day at 9 a.m. So that's the world I come from. We don't have electricity in my district. We don't have roads that go to that district. We have 43 schools, by the way, only on books in Ministry of Education from the last republic, but no actual school. And we have 143 teachers that the world paid for, but they are not there in reality. The reason I'm saying all this is the reason that I am here in the first place. I started challenging all those things that made the tribal and rural Afghans be limited when it comes to education, because there was all these proofs that we are getting an education, but in reality we were not. I started from my own home. My own cousin couldn't access education because we were in an IDP camp, and that IDP camp as a whole, as a district, couldn't access a whole school until grade 12. Right now, after 4 years of journey, after 7,000 students, teaching them through digital literacy, making sure where we don't have electricity, we use solar panels, where we don't have internet, we use offline libraries, making sure that we go to places and make sure that we meet the community and don't force our ideas on them. Today, we have a country where education is still not allowed. Today, we have an active ban on girls' education. From grade 7 up until grade 12, girls are not allowed right now in Afghanistan. But at the moment, we still can't lose hope. So we have 4 schools in 4 different regions of Afghanistan right now. We have one in Kandahar, one in Kabul, one in Takhar, and one in Bamyan. All these schools provide education to 100 girl leaders who are between the age of 13 to 18, and all of them are from public schools that are closed down right now. We teach them digital skills that helps them develop skills and earn some money so that they can stay in school longer and they are not married off. And at the same time, we teach them STEM subjects like biophysics, chemistry. So once they graduate high school, we are able to enroll them as midwives, doctors, teachers in different schools that will help us build our country once we become a democracy again. And I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pashtana. It really is extraordinary work under very difficult circumstances, and really do admire that and really give our support and hope for the safety and security of the people that you work with in Kandahar and elsewhere. I think also you raised an issue that that was mentioned in the opening remarks, that it's not just about the digital divide, it's about bridging the electrical and digital divide, universal connectivity. If there's not the infrastructure even in the grid to provide that, it's something that you need to, as you say, meet the community at the local level in order to provide the best policies. And of course, the circumstances in Afghanistan are very particular under the current ban. And I'm really grateful to hear that some form of education for girls is able to move forward, although I understand that it must be a very very difficult context to do that. But we stand in solidarity with you. Excellent. We'll have more opportunity to speak further about that. And I should have mentioned at the beginning to our colleagues and friends who are in the webinar that we will offer the opportunity for Q&A later. And you can start as soon as you like, putting some questions in the Q&A or the chat at the bottom of your screen if you are in the webinar, and I'll feed some of those questions to our panelists. Next, we will hear from Abhijit Kandagale, founder of the Katra Top Innovator Uplink World Economic Forum. Abhijit is a World Economic Forum awarded Top Innovator for his startup Katra, and he leads the nonprofit Virkush Ecosystems. As a community enabler, he operates across South Asia, working with social entrepreneurs and over 100+ partners. Abhijit, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to hear all of you. Thank you to the ambassadors for putting up such strong opening statements, and I'm quite encouraged and inspired by my fellow panelists here today. Wonderful work, and I feel there's very little that I add, but through technology, and I believe my work could enable all of you scale what you've been doing. Quick introduction into me. I've had a career of almost 10 years now, primarily as an entrepreneur, building tools. My grandfather was a teacher. My uncle was in the arts and a poet, and that really, moved me towards the education and literature domain. While growing up, again, I come from a small town in India called Nagpur, which is now aspiring to be a metro city. But still here we see, challenges. I've primarily done work in the startup sector for first half of my career, and I had a wonderful opportunity to serve for the Clean India mission. That's the Swachh Bharat mission in India. And that's where I realized on the true reality of the country, right? The challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis for the major population that relies in India. That really moved me, and I was guided by a couple of my mentors to build together on this experience, and that's what this nonprofit Vruksh came into picture in enabling entrepreneurship at the grassroots, which helps solve problems at the local level. And through that network, we've been able to build a community of social entrepreneurs who we support on a regular basis, who further improve the impact in their community. And as everyone discussed, right, the pandemic was a major setback in learning, and that's something that we faced firsthand, and that made me being a maker, being a product guy, helped me find solutions on how do we reach to those people who are primarily who are affected by the digital divide. And that really conspired, rather, I would say, into becoming what Ekatra is today. It's a no data learning platform. One simple way that I try and put it out, it's Udemy on WhatsApp, which most people understand, and was thankful enough to get spotted by World Economic Forum and Deloitte under the Uplink platform, and got the support to really take this innovation to the next level. So yeah, that's a quick insight into my work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhijit. That's really interesting to hear, listen to you and learn from your experience. It made me think that, we talk a lot about the need for private, public-private partnerships in these issues. And often I think when you talk about digital connectivity, digital education, what comes to mind when people think of private-public is big tech. But actually, it's actually, especially in some of the last mile providers, or in contexts where you need to expand connectivity, it's really the small and medium businesses. It's the local social entrepreneurs that are important. And we can't forget those actors that are really critically important at the community level. Thank you so much. We'll now turn to Niall Deng, refugee and a peace activist from South Sudan. Niall spent 11 years in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, and now attends Huron University in Canada. As a youth leader and community activist in Kakuma, he initiated a number of projects in the camp to help young people build better futures, such as the Refugee Youth Peace Ambassadors and She Leads Kakuma. Niall, welcome. We really look forward to hearing about your experience. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Adam, for having me today. And I just want to also give a shout out to all the incredible youth leaders that I'm sharing this space with. I had the opportunity to meet Victoria, as you said, at the Transform Education Pre-Summit in Paris. And yeah, I think just like every other young person here, I'm always impressed by by the capacity, the resilience, the innovation, the creativity of young people all across the world. And this is something I say all the time, that young people have so much that, they have to help us, turn into the right path in building a better future and a just world for everyone. So yeah, thank you for having me today. My name is Niall Deng. I'm a South Sudanese refugee, writer, youth activist, and advocate, and community activist and organizer as well. I spent 11 years in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. I now live in London, Ontario in Canada. And I've been affected by war for generations and my family. I was born and raised in Ethiopia, where my father settled after fleeing the first Sudanese civil war more than 5 decades ago. And as a kid, my dad believed in the power of education, so he worked so hard to send me to school. And I used to go to school in the morning in Ethiopia, and my dad is a storyteller. He would tell me stories about his upbringing back in South Sudan. And I used to question why I could not go back to South Sudan, where I'm originally from. And those questions helped me learn about the injustice in the world and how conflict and war deprive young people of opportunities to education and opportunities to be able to build a life for themselves and their communities. And also my dad used to have a small radio, so you listen to radio every morning. So that radio helped me learn a lot about the world. So one morning, I was listening to the radio, and my dad were listening to BBC, and I asked him why he has never listened to me on his radio for a day. So my dad told me I need to go to school, master very good English, and then go to London and work for BBC, and he will listen to me. So the next morning I went back to school. I told my teacher, hey, you know what? Today I'm here to learn very good English, go to London, and I work for BBC. And my teacher told me all I need to do is read a lot of books and watch American television shows. So we did not have a TV, so I could not watch TV, but I had access to a few books in the school library. So every single day after school, I'd go to the library and read every single book I could find. And then when I come and listen to the radio in the evening, I'll listen clearly and try to see if I could hear any word that I read today. And through the radio, I learned a lot about the world. And I was just fascinated by technology. I started mimicking the news anchors, and I even dream of becoming a journalist. So that was my dream as a kid. In 2010, our village was attacked, and I had to fly to Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And when I got to the camp, the first thing I asked the UN Refugee Agency registration officer was, after I was registered as a refugee, could I go to school again? And she told me yes. And I remember going to school the first day. I was traumatized by the images of war I witnessed while fleeing my country. But in my classroom, I sit down and I think again about a glowing future. I think again about a career in journalism. I think again about being a news broadcaster and broadcasting news to people in the world, about telling stories of my village. And I was able to go to school in the camp. I finished high school. After finishing high school, I did not have an opportunity to go to university. And the only way I could learn was through online learning programs. So I go to digital learning centers in the camp and took courses on Coursera, on edX, on Allison, another learning platform, but also, was privileged to have those opportunities. And I had a smartphone that helped me learn. So I was like, I should share this knowledge with other young people. So that is how I created space like the Refugee Peace Ambassadors to bring young people together so that we could share knowledge ourselves, learn from each other. We used to watch YouTube tutorial together and learn about different things. And it was just like a great learning space. But also something that also struck me the most is that I would go around the camp and go to big UN offices that were in the camp, other international organizations. And I was like, these people make decision in these offices without including those who are actually in the field. And that is why I feel like there's need for decision makers and policy makers, not just to make decisions based on textbook experience and think they learn about communities they work for, but to actually work for these communities and work together with them so that they can include their voices, their concern, and their recommendations, so that decisions that they make and solutions that they design are more effective and can actually work in these communities. So that is why I entered the advocacy space to say, hey, we need to listen to youth voices and put youth leadership at the forefront of building a better world. And I see technology as a very big tool that we can use, to not just bridge the education gap, but also to help young people be able to access online opportunities, be it online job, to be able to connect with other youth leaders from across the world and build solutions together and help us get toward the right path that we want to take toward building a more peaceful, inclusive, and just and secure world that works for everyone. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story. There's so much there. I mean, as at IPI, of course, as a peace institute, your initial story and observation about how conflict and war provides extraordinary obstacles for young people who want to get educated but can't because of the security situation is really something that we take very seriously. But also listening to your story, the variety of platforms that you interacted with to get your education, from books to radio. You said you didn't have a TV, but then later having access to YouTube and such. I think that we often think very limited about the kinds of platforms that we can use, and we have to really imagine more. But most importantly, your final point about the need to include young voices in decision making and in envisioning this future, and thinking about technology as well as not just an education platform, but a way to help young people connect with decision makers is something that's interesting to me. So I'd like to come back to the panel, and in some sense, really, I think these two presentations that bookend here, Victoria's and Nihal's, and this theme of engagement. I mean, we've got this summit coming up in September. You have such extraordinary stories and insights. I'm wondering, Victoria, if you could tell us a bit more of how you envision that engagement. What would good engagement with youth look like, and how can we help to advance that at the summit in September? Victoria, can you tell us a bit about your perspective on that?
Absolutely. I think I can begin by sharing that the 16th of September is confirmed as the Youth Mobilization Day, and this is part of the 3-day sessions for the Transforming Education Summit. There are currently consultations that are taking place to be reflected on the Youth Declaration Statement, which will be presented to the Secretary General during the opening session of the summit on the 19th. And the next consultation is happening on August 12th, so tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. CET on Zoom. There is a dedicated space for youth engagement on the summit's website. It's called the Transforming Education Summit Knowledge Hub. That would be the space to gather information on the youth engagement processes, the different consultations that have taken place. I think it's super important for young people to know that they do not have to wait to organize and to, bring together their constituencies and group that they represent before they can be heard. We are receiving documents from young people who have been leading consultation to reflect in this Youth Declaration consultation statement. And also the consultation tomorrow would be another avenue for young people to share. Anyone who would be interested in learning more about the summit, in addition to already visiting the website, very much welcome them to reach out to us. We're encouraging as many young people as possible who would be in New York or who are able to join online to participate in this Youth Mobilization Day, because it's very important that young people are present in spaces like this to share insights on the futures of education for their generation and for future generation, and that they are also interacting with leaders. The Mobilization Day would provide the opportunity for young people to interact with ministers, but there's also going to be a youth roundtable for young people to share about what they are doing. I think that this summit presents an opportunity not to learn about new solutions. There are existing solutions and we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. So it's super important that we are listening to young people and we are learning about solutions that are already existing. I think we've heard from all three panelists, Niall, Pashtana and Habijit, about the work that they are doing in their home countries. I think what we need is for leaders to be supporting these efforts at the national level. The special advisor to the Secretary General for the summit, Leonardo, had shared that the summit would not be the space where change happens. It's only going to spark movement and ideas. The real change happens on the ground. So highly encouraging young people to add their voice and also to follow and to stay updated on commitments that would be made at the summit and beyond to ensure that they hold leaders accountable to their promises. So simply to recap, the Knowledge Hub is that space, and we are also very open to receiving interest and inputs and from young people who are interested in learning about how they can engage, and all of this information are available on the Knowledge Hub. There are also social media, official social media accounts on LinkedIn, on Twitter, which is Transforming Education, and this could be another avenue to stay up to date on the processes leading up to the summit.
Excellent. Thank you, Victoria. It's interesting. Thank you for the information on the summit, and I really do encourage everyone to go to that website and engage in the platforms that are open for the summit. One thing that you said is sort of interesting to me is that, we're talking about transforming education, but sometimes transforming education is really just kind of listening to the actors on the ground that are already working. We don't have to just sort of sit back and wait and try to invent what is the new policy that we need, because there's actors on the ground that are dealing with problems right now and coming up with innovative solutions. And we have several of them here. I think Pashtana's description of the work that she is doing is very actively addressing concrete problems right now, and something that leaders need to address. And Abhijit is a top innovator, is also working on innovative solutions. Pashtana, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Do you could you perhaps reflect a little bit on that, on what do you see as successful engagement look like with youth on these issues?
I think one thing, as a person who's still under 25, one thing I have learned over the course of years instead of talking to them, assign tasks to them. Like, yes, talking should be phase one. It shouldn't be the whole project. Sometimes when I was back home, the only thing I would see is bringing them to high platforms where you talk to them, where you ask for suggestions or what they might suggest or what they might have on their mind. I think that should be phase one, but there should be phase two or phase three where they plan, they organize, and then they implement. Young people have a lot of energy, and that should be used and made sure that that's used and put towards something that's more important, especially education. So I think bringing them in to talk to them, engage with them should always be phase one. It shouldn't be the whole project. And then there should be tasks assigned to them. If a person is more of an educator, they should be working with the curriculum. If a person is more of a person who loves to design and create, they should be more into teaching them skills and designs and trying to find them artwork. These should all be the areas that we should be exploring. There is a management when it comes with it. I think sometimes young people tend to lose their motivation in the middle for one reason, because A, they don't have a lot of resources and funding to implement their ideas. B, most of the time they're told by adults that, and even like, when you are in your early 20s, they are told that, yeah, you know what, this is not an actual job for you. So just move on, do an actual job that pays you. So I think it's very important we engage with them meaningfully, but also give them a space to grow and implement, and so that they can tell someone, yes, I did that, and that helps them again. So yeah.
Great. I think that's an excellent point. I started out saying how we need to listen and learn from youth leaders, but it's more than that. We need not only just listen and learn, but we need to act. We need to work with youth leaders, because my experience of youth is that they're not waiting around. You're not waiting around for you're working already and creating solutions to problems. And so that needs to be something that the adult leadership or senior leadership anyway takes into account. Abhijit, do you have any innovative thoughts on this this engagement question?
Well, I think absolutely. I echo what Pashtana said, that it always needs to be, from a very technology perspective or a product development perspective, we follow something called the design thinking philosophy, right? Where the first step itself is empathy, where you go out and interact with the user to understand what the core problem is, and then go out on building a solution. I think I was early on when I started building my nonprofit, is very privileged to be part of this UNICEF consultation that happened at the state and the national level, wherein there were young people brought right from school-going children to nonprofit leaders to people in the government, and they came together to understand what the key challenges were, and that really brought out the next phase of the project. And I think something like this, and even what we did while I was working for the Swachh Bharat mission, that was the core thing, where reaching out to the grassroots and really interacting with the actor who's on the field is very important before you take any next step. And that I saw in action firsthand, and that really cemented my trust also in the system in a way that, yes, this is happening. There are people, organizations, governments, bodies that are taking this approach, and it's not just people behind a computer or in a cabin formulating what needs to happen. So I think that change is happening. There are more youth coming in the picture. I think this initiative itself is bringing some of us on the table and allowing us to share our thoughts. I think that's one of those key steps that needs to happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think that also kind of connects up with some of what Neil was saying earlier about thinking about digital education. Digital platforms is not just about how you can provide education, but how you can actually engage a multi-stakeholder approach with youth, with government, with the private sector, and others in formulating policy. Neil, could you tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on that?
Yes. Thank you so much. And I think, wonderful ideas, raised by my fellow youth panelists. And I think, just to your point, I think technology, gave us a great opportunity, to be able to connect young people together, and to be able to connect to different stakeholders from all across the world to come together and face the future. Because if you look at problem facing our world today, they are global problems. We look at the education crisis that affect every single part of our world. We all know what COVID did to education. It interrupt learning at every single country. We saw what happened with COVID-19. The health crisis that affect our world. They transcend borders. War and conflict transcend borders. So there's need for a global response. There's need for a global solution. There's need for a global solidarity. And I feel like that is why bringing people together is very important. Building avenues where youth can connect, share ideas, share best practices, support each other in their work. I think those are very, very important, key things that we should put into consideration as we look about, moving to the future. But I think, something that is also very important, when we think about meaningfully engaged young people, is that these need to build the agency and capacity of youth, of young people as change makers in their own community. If you need to see young people at the driving seat of a better future and a just world, we need to invest in youth initiatives, that are doing the actual work on the ground. As Victoria said, from the words of the Transform Education Summit, advisor, that the real work happen on the ground. These spaces and these global conferences are just spaces that people make commitment, where people connect and share ideas. But for us, solutions will be, actually be implemented on the ground. So that is why these need to invest in youth initiative, that are actually doing actual work on the ground. These need to invest, in the agency and capacity of young people, and empower them as change makers in their own communities, so that they can, keep on organizing, keep on speaking up, keep on, building solutions in their own communities. And also, when you think about inclusion as well, which is something also talk about a lot, in most of my engagement, is that, we need to understand that youth is not just one big demographic. We need to engage young people in all their diversities, and that include refugee youth, migrants, indigenous communities, young people with disabilities, girls and women who are often left behind in their communities and in these spaces, where young people are engaged. So there's need to look at, not just young people as one big demographic, but, young people are so many different, diversities, from different corners of the world. So there's need to, always have that inclusion lens and intersectionality as we think about engaging young people. And then, I think something that is also very important when decision makers and policy makers connect with young people and those in power is that there's need, to move from tokenistic, engagement ways, as Victoria said earlier. There's need to co-create with young people, not just come to young people when decisions are already made and just to seek validation for those decisions, but actually to co-create with young people. And that is, from brainstorming, to, ideating solutions, and actually to going to the implementation, and also, evaluating those solutions and how effective they are. Because we cannot design solutions for young people and expect that we will know that those solutions are effective without listening to those that they impact the most. So I think that is why there's the need that, engagement young people should be a co-creation process that is starting, right from when we brainstorm ideas and solution to when, we actually look at if those ideas and solutions are effective or not.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, I really like this idea of the inclusion lens and understanding that when we're including youth, we're not including some sort of homogenous group. It's a group with tremendous diversity across the globe, and we need to just keep that in mind at all times. And also to putting a finer point on this insight that we're not just talking about listening and learning, we're talking about doing. And I like this idea of co-creating is very nicely put. We've only got about 10 minutes left, and I do want to bring in at least one question that came in from the floor, and it kind of comes back to really actually what are we talking about when we're talking about digital education? We've been discussing a bit about really focusing on this point of engagement, which is extremely important, about how we develop policies and how we understand overcoming the challenges. But all of us really, I think, have had experiences now with digital education, whether as students, as partners, as parents. And I'm wondering, as we talk about transforming education in the summit and beyond, and learning experiences from COVID, and both sort of the challenges that it's created, but also the problems that it's revealed that are long existing. I'm wondering what from your experience should be the goal of digital education, and understanding that it's not that there are drawbacks and advantages, and we need to kind of understand those strengths and weaknesses, and develop them accordingly. Build on the strengths and mitigate the weaknesses. And I'm wondering if any of you could give us some insight on where you would like to see this agenda move as we engage at the multilateral level and at the local and national level to transform our education systems. Victoria, would you like to go first?
Yes, Adam. But to me, I think it's mainstreaming digital tools and resources. I think that the last few years has shown us that the way that we learn is changing, and there is no going back. And even though COVID exacerbated or showed us the gaps in education, it also presented some opportunities as a result of digital tools. People were able to stay engaged in learning. However, this wasn't even, it wasn't equal. Those who were coming from underserved and marginalized communities were the most impacted. I think that it would be super important to mainstream digital infrastructures, across board, not to see digital learning as a separate conversation from all other conversation that we need to have. When we talk about access and inclusion, when we talk about different priorities in education, it is super important that to realize all of these priorities, that we mainstream digital infrastructures in order to bridge the gaps, and that we empower stakeholders. Important stakeholders like teachers are very important. It's not enough to focus on the beneficiaries and to say that students and learners need to acquire these skills, but if teachers are not empowered, then those who are on the other end won't be able to acquire the necessary skills as well.
Fantastic. I think that's really important that we think about. This is not a separate conversation to the general conversation about education. It's a critical part of it, and we can't forget the teachers. We often think about it's good. I mean, I think the students have to be in the front, but of course we need to ensure that the teachers have the required skills. Yes, Abhijit, I think, did I just see your hand up?
Yeah, I think this it's very intrigued by the question. So I think one of the key things that I've seen, implementing this, because we're running a completely offline program, and we had to move into a pure online mode because of the pandemic. And at the same time, the people the students that we're dealing with did not have access to digital learning, smartphones, internet solutions. I think the key aspect here is, there is always going to be a hybrid approach that will be relevant, because you can't take away the learning that happens in peer groups, right? In a lot of ways, digital education or digital learning provided a common learning platform. It made it accessible, but I think the human element of it needs to be there, because there's just so much that we learn when we're sitting together in a community instead of interacting in an online medium. Also, I think when we think of digital learning, we always think of a video-based solution. We always think a live class, something like that. And I think that's exactly what needs to also be optimized, or that the thought process needs to change, because learning does not happen always in a live format. And that's exactly what we've implemented in our solution, because we're dealing with people who we never knew, like, did not have internet access at the same time or had device access at the same time. So we built it on a micro learning and an async pedagogy, and that really helped us scale the impact to a level where where we were able to, we delivered an entrepreneurship content to young people in semi-urban rural areas, and out of 1,500 students that we taught in our first phase, almost 100 of them made business plans, and about 50 of them came up with business ideas. And these are, I'm telling you, small shops, like somebody who has a welding shop to a dairy farm to stitching center, those kind of ideas. And I think that was something that cemented the thought for us that, okay, this model can work, and that's exactly what I'm trying to propagate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's something that you said that I think is quite interesting, and I'd like to hear Pashtana's views on it. This point that, we often think about digital education, and maybe this is a sort of a Western or developed world thinking about, streaming video and really data heavy kind of education. But actually, you could think about it a bit more innovatively and about offline, digital, but offline, and not live formats. And I'm wondering, Pashtana, if you have any thoughts or is that something that you incorporate into your approach in Learn Afghanistan or in other thinking?
I think when we started Learn, the idea was simply because we couldn't access internet because we come from a district which internet is a privilege and something that's very high on the stake. We didn't have electricity, a normal thing. And the tablet or the phones that we talk about, that was not accessible either. So that's the background we come from. Right now in Afghanistan, it's the same thing. Of course, some 400 girls can access internet, but then a lot of thousands of and billions of kids cannot. So what we did was, at the same time, we went on and integrated this radio program that we used, and now we teach in 2 different languages, the native languages that we have. One thing I do definitely believe in is internet is not the only solution on this planet, and live streaming is not the only solution. It definitely is the up and coming solution for education, but it's not the only viable solution. We can still use radio. We still use it in sub-Saharan Africa. We still use it in the MENA region. We use it in Afghanistan. As an educator, that's something I take pride in, that kids still do audio learning in this time and day. That's one thing that I think is very important to understand. Apart from that, there's another program where in Afghanistan, you send homework packages and illustrations, comic illustrations to houses of students, and they go from one house to another. And they do their homework and they resubmit it to that one counselor in the village. They check it on the weekly basis, and then it's returned on a Saturday. So the reason I'm telling you all these educational models, but they are still employable. They are still needed in countries like Afghanistan or other countries that are either war-torn, conflict-ridden, or still an active zone where education is not accessible. So I think for me, access to learning is very important, be it formal, informal, structured, unstructured, as long as it helps you think critically, as long as it makes you a responsible citizen and interact with your society and contribute to your society. The internet, radio, learning from home, that comes later. That should be something that we should be accepting right now. Everyone should be learning on their own pace, and we should be accepting this in this time and century. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Pashtana. I think this goes back to this point about the conversation around digital education is not a separate conversation. It's about education today and about ensuring the access to education for all, including, very importantly, the most vulnerable. And so we really need to keep that in mind. And it goes back to my mind thinking about Nihal's point about the inclusion lens. And understanding that needs to be really our motivating factor in here to ensure that everybody is included and be able to access education in whatever form it can take. And there's a lot of different tools that we can use. So thank you very much. We're just about out of time. I want to give Nihal one more chance if you have any final thoughts to tell us about your perspective on how we understand digital education, the actual pedagogy that we're discussing, as we look to transform education to ensure access for all.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I think Victoria, Pashtana, and also Bridget read some very, very important points on how we should envision digital education, because as Pashtana said, in many communities, technological tools, internet access, digital literacy skills are still very much missing, and we cannot use technology to bring education to these communities if they do not have access to the tools, if internet access is not available, and if even young people do not have literacy skill. So there's need, to make sure that as we ambition, technology as a tool to bridge the education, gap, and then we should think about, making sure that these young people have access to the tool that they need to in order to be able to access these opportunities, that young people, have, the digital literacy skill that they need, and that internet access, is available. And I think, these need to envision different ways. It should not just be, high, very high I bandish, streaming. These need to envision, even audio tools. As I said earlier, in my own experience, I learned about the world through my father radio. It was like my first sort of education. Even while I was going to this school, school just gave me, very basic knowledge, but my father radio expanded, gave me so much knowledge about the world. I remember one day in 2008, we're sitting, and when they announced about, president becoming Obama becoming the president of the US, my dad told me, oh, we now have a black person ruling the world. And I was so confused. So I had to go and try to find what does that mean? So it was like a great way, to learn that. And, there's still, many ways that radio is still being used today. I could talk specifically about Kakuma refugee camp. Before I moved to Canada, COVID hit while I was in Kakuma refugee camp. And what UNHCR did and other education, practitioners in the camp is that they distribute radios, and then they would invite refugee teachers and other teachers in the camp to go to a radio station and, continue providing, online, radio programming so that young people in the camp and students could learn, because the television program that was being provided by the government was not accessible in the camp because very few families have access to television. So these need to look at all those different means to ensure that we bring education to these communities, and also exploring how we can be innovative. One program in Kakuma that I can also talk about is the Kakuma Innovation Lab School, where we work, where we have computers that are already preloaded with offline content, so a student can go there and access content on Wikipedia that is offline, using Wikipedia devices. So I think there's so many different ways to make it to be innovative, so that we can reach those that are very much left behind and who do not have access to technology and internet is still today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. There's so much there, and I feel that I could speak with this group for a very long time, but though we are out of time. And I just want to, we've talked about engagement, we've talked about listening and learning and doing. And I just want to say that we are committed to listen and learn and do continually with you. We're looking forward to the outcomes of the summit, and to continuing our work, engaging with all of you. And it's really been inspiring to hear your stories and to feel the sense of energy and innovation that is coming from all the work that you're doing. And so just in gratitude, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for our partners in the Republic of Korea and UNICEF and our Ambassador Jong Eun-bae, and to all our participants in the webinar. Thank you so much. Take care.